Top 4 actors Robert Duvall hated most. For more than 6 decades, Robert Duvall has stood as one of Hollywood's most respected giants, an actor whose raw honesty, unshakable integrity, and unmatched craft cemented his place as a legend. But behind that iron professionalism burned opinions he kept buried deep, until now. In a jaw-dropping interview that is Hollywood buzzing, the 94-year-old Oscar winner finally broke his silence, revealing the 4 actors he absolutely could not stand throughout his storied career. And these weren't petty disagreements. These were bitter feuds that left scars on productions, shaped performances, and in some cases, rewrote the history of films we thought we knew. "I've held my tongue for decades," Duvall confessed. "But at 94, what exactly am I waiting for? It's time the truth came out." The shock doesn't lie only in the names he dropped, but in the source itself. For decades, Duvall was regarded as Hollywood's consummate professional, the actor who never stooped to gossip, never spoke ill of his peers. That this paragon of restraint has finally broken ranks signals conflicts so deep they've haunted him well into his 10th decade. Why now? Those close to him say the answer lies in legacy. After watching one too many revisionist tributes painting toxic relationships as lifelong friendships, Duvall decided the historical record had to be corrected. The final straw came during a career tribute where he was forced to watch glowing montages of himself alongside actors he secretly despised. "I sat there listening to all that nonsense about mutual respect and great collaborations," Duvall revealed. "Meanwhile, I'm remembering how one of them deliberately stepped on my lines to ruin takes, and another tried to get me fired from what became one of my signature roles." With his legacy secure, an Academy Award, countless nominations, and a body of work etched into film history, Duvall no longer feels bound by Hollywood's code of silence. More importantly, he believes young actors deserve the truth, that sometimes greatness is born not from harmony, but from hostility. And with that, Robert Duvall spoke the names. The first one alone left even hardened Hollywood insiders stunned. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando, the most destructive ego I ever encountered. When Robert Duvall dropped that unprecedented revelation, the entertainment world stood still. It wasn't shocking because Brando was some obscure figure, quite the opposite. Brando was widely hailed as the greatest actor of all time, a genius without question. Yet Duvall insisted he was also a force of chaos, a man who would derail entire productions just to prove he could. Their most explosive clash came during the ill-fated 1966 film The Chase. The cast boasted Brando, Duvall, Jane Fonda, and Robert Redford, a dream lineup. But what audiences never saw was the psychological war raging behind the camera, one that would leave scars on Duvall's craft for decades. Brando would intentionally alter his performance from take to take, making editing nearly impossible. If he disagreed with the director's vision, he'd sabotage the coverage of other actors' scenes. He called it protecting the integrity of the performance. Duvall called it what it was, professional sabotage. The feud boiled over during a pivotal monologue for the young Duvall. Sources confirm Brando repeatedly disrupted the scene by making barely audible noises off-camera, subtle enough that microphones picked them up, forcing endless retakes. After the 5th ruined take, Duvall confronted him. Brando smirked and delivered a chilling line, "Maybe you should be stronger in your choices." That was Brando, undermining you, then framing it as your weakness. What makes this revelation so stunning is how it clashes with the public story. For years, Duvall publicly praised Brando as a towering influence, even while privately resenting the cruelty. The two would circle each other again on The Godfather, though they shared no scenes, a scheduling decision that now seems anything but accidental. "I learned more from watching Brando than anyone else," Duvall admitted. "But what I learned wasn't just technique. I learned that genius doesn't excuse cruelty." This complicated mix of admiration and disdain explains Duvall's decades of silence. Respect for the artistry, contempt for the behavior. And just when Hollywood thought that was the most shocking confession, Duvall's second revelation was even more unexpected. James Caan, competitive to the point of malice. The second name Duvall dropped hit especially hard for Hollywood insiders, his Godfather co-star James Caan. On screen, Caan's Sonny Corleone and Duvall's Tom Hagen created one of the most convincing brotherly bonds in film history. Off-screen, however, the reality couldn't have been more different. "Jimmy and I barely spoke off camera," Duvall admitted. "That's acting." According to Duvall, the trouble started early, during rehearsals. While he came in prepared and focused, Khan allegedly turned everything into a contest. Jimmy was competitive to the point of malice, Duvall said. If I had a big moment, he'd find some way to pull focus, hands flying, a dramatic gesture, a facial tic. Anything to steal the scene. Things escalated during the now iconic family meeting scene, where the Corleones debate going to war with the Tattaglias. Between takes, Duvall was quietly discussing his character with director Francis Ford Coppola when Khan allegedly cut him off, dismissing Tom Hagen as nothing more than a glorified secretary. That, Duvall recalled, was the breaking point. I decided right then we would never be friends. But I also decided Tom Hagen would always keep a wary eye on Sonny, and in the end, it served the performance. That's exactly what a consigliere would do with a hothead like Sonny. What makes the revelation so stunning is how flawlessly the two men hid their animosity for decades. During press tours, anniversary celebrations, and reunion interviews, they smiled, swapped stories, and projected camaraderie. We both knew what was at stake, Duvall explained. We weren't going to let personal issues tarnish something that important. So, we smiled and played our parts. That's also acting. This glimpse into their rivalry doesn't just shed light on James Caan's fiery temperament, it also reveals Duvall's quiet resolve. While clashes with Brando and Caan remained professional battles, his next confession would cut much deeper, exposing something far more personal. Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman, the credit thief who never stopped. When Robert Duvall revealed his blacklist of Hollywood betrayals, many were stunned to see Hoffman's name. After all, both men had risen from the same trenches, unknown character actors fighting for scraps in New York during the 1960s. Duvall remembers those days vividly. Two struggling dreamers sharing a cramped apartment, trading auditions, and leaning on each other for survival. We were friends, Duvall said. Or at least, I thought we were. But what began as friendly competition soon soured. Duvall claims Hoffman would sit in on his private rehearsals, watch him labor for weeks to shape an audition, then steal those same choices for himself, sometimes word for word. When Hoffman landed the role, he'd dismiss it as inspiration. To Duvall, it was plain theft. The tension only grew with time. During the filming of True Grit in 1969, Duvall says Hoffman called him constantly, fishing for insights that would shape Ratso Rizzo in Midnight Cowboy. Hours of advice later, Duvall opened a magazine and read Hoffman's polished story about studying homeless men in New York. Not a single mention of their late-night calls. The final betrayal, Duvall insists, came when both were in the running for the French Connection in 1971. The role ultimately went to Gene Hackman, but according to Duvall, Hoffman poisoned the well by telling director William Friedkin that he was difficult and uncooperative, a damning label that cost him the chance at a career-defining part. That crossed the line, Duvall said. That was sabotage. And yet, for decades afterward, Duvall kept the feud buried under a veneer of public respect. He shook Hoffman's hand at premieres, spoke kindly of his work, and played the part of a cordial colleague. That's why Hollywood is reeling now, shocked by the depth of bitterness behind Duvall's quiet smile. If his accusations are true, then one of the industry's most respected actors built part of his legendary career on borrowed voices and stolen craft. Robert Redford, the fraud behind the golden image. The final, and perhaps most shocking name on Robert Duvall's list is none other than Hollywood royalty himself, Robert Redford. For decades, Redford has been untouchable, the golden boy with a spotless reputation. He was the thoughtful artist, the environmentalist, the champion of independent film. At least, that's the image he carefully constructed. But according to Duvall, the truth was far uglier. Behind the charm was not a collaborator but a calculating opportunist, someone who treated crew members like furniture and co-stars like competition. Their feud erupted on the set of The Natural in 1984, where Duvall played sports columnist Max Mercy opposite Redford's aging baseball legend Roy Hobbs. What should have been a straightforward partnership quickly soured. He'd keep entire crews waiting for hours, Duvall recalled. Not because he was lost in character work. He was on the phone, handling business deals. Meanwhile, the clock's ticking, salaries are burning, and people are just standing around. That's not artistry, that's arrogance. It got worse. During their key confrontation scenes, Duvall says Redford pressed director Barry Levinson to cut down his role, especially the moments where Max Mercy challenged Hobbs's carefully built myth. To Duvall, it was crystal clear. Redford wasn't protecting the story. He was protecting his spotlight. The bitter irony. Redford was portraying a man terrified of exposure, while behind the camera, he was doing everything possible to silence a co-star who threatened his dominance. And when Duvall confronted him after filming, Redford allegedly delivered a line that still burns decades later. "You're a character actor, Bob. I'm a movie star. We're not playing by the same rules." That moment, Duvall says, revealed the fraud behind the golden image. He never looked at Redford the same way again. The fallout was seismic. Hollywood, long invested in Redford's pristine persona, scrambled. His representatives issued polished statements of respect, while industry veterans quietly confirmed Duvall's version. Crew members from The Natural stepped forward with similar stories. Even Francis Ford Coppola admitted that the tension audiences see on screen often reflects messy personal dynamics behind it. More telling still, actors privately thanked Duvall for finally saying aloud what many had whispered for years. His bluntness wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. "I've given 60 years to this industry," Duvall said. "Part of that respect means being honest about its realities, not just the sanitized version we all pretend is true." And perhaps the most chilling part? Duvall hinted there's more. "These four stood out," he said, "but they weren't alone." With those words, he didn't just shatter Redford's image. He pulled back the curtain on Hollywood itself. For decades, we've been sold myths of integrity and collaboration. Duvall reminds us that great performances don't always come from harmony. Sometimes, they come from real conflict, channeled into art by actors disciplined enough to separate the work from the bitterness. As Duvall reaches the twilight of his legendary career, he seems less interested in protecting reputations and more determined to protect the truth. In an industry built on illusions, maybe his most important role is the one he's playing now, the truth-teller who refused to stay silent. So, what do you think? Was Robert Redford really the fraud behind the golden image? Or was Duvall finally saying what others didn't dare? Drop your thoughts below, and if you want more behind-the-scenes revelations from Hollywood's golden age, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.